I'm serious. Kamala Harris just lost the election after this Fox News interview. She was confronted with the facts, and she wasn't able to give a single answer without her temper tantrums and I'm speaking lines and rambling on about something else, because this was a great interview. I was wrong about Brett. He covered things from the border to trans surgeries to Biden's decline. So let's just jump right into the biggest topic, the border.
How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration, because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
and
they didn't bring up that bill.
I'm responding to the point you're raising,
okay.
And I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem.
I let this one play out because I wanted you to get the whole feel of Kamala's response. She didn't have a single response to how many people entered the country. She didn't have a response to all the executive orders she took away. It's just her dancing around the fact she wanted to pass a bill in Congress, which I'll let Brett do the speaking for.
Guns and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
6 Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue,
I hear you.
But actually is focused on fixing it.
6 Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it.
How does it go from a conversation of Donald Trump being the bad guy when she's the one that created this mess? She can't hide behind a bill if her administration used executive action to cause these problems.
You said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration, even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed.
That was a factory reset of a question for her. We know she said it was secure, but then she goes on to answer that she's been clear it hasn't been secure. I'm sorry, where are my brain cells? But how about we have Brett confront Kamala with real facts on what her border policies have done to real families?
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I am so sorry for her loss. Sincerely. But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
But do you want to answer
in all fairness, I told you, I feel awful.
She feels awful, but not sorry, because that's what her cronies tell her she had to do in order to get more Democrat voters in the country. I'm glad Brett pressed on her for apologizing, because she now looks like a heartless witch for trying to transition this conversation to Donald Trump yet again. Now Brett confronts Kamala for not being endorsed by the Border Patrol agents.
But you frequently talked to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Why do you think they said that?
I think they're frustrated, and I get it. They want support.
So why did you not ever give them support? They just want to be able to do their jobs. God, this woman is so awful. Now we get to my favorite question that I wanted to be asked. Is she in support of trans surgeries for inmates? Well, I wanted minors, but this works too.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries
you know what, you got to take responsible for what happened
presidency.
in your administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in this presidency.
It's in black and white.
Would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment surgeries?
I will follow the law, just as I think Donald Trump would say he did.
You would have a say as president.
Like I said, I think he spent $20 million on those ads, trying to create a sense of fear in the voters.
I'm sorry, but I didn't hear her deny saying taxpayers should not be funding these trans surgeries. She will follow the law? Okay, to what extent will she follow the law before her values change? No surgeries happened in his presidency. Now, that was a mic drop, I'll tell you that one. I'm just flabbergasted at her lack of responses. But she just keeps giving us free ad clips. Now we move on to her talking about how she wants to turn the page, which never makes sense because she'd be going back many chapters, then turning the page. She finally gives an answer on what the difference between her and Biden is. And let's just say it's basically Marxism.
So, you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others.
Okay, but she was in politics forever, being elected DA in 2003 after sleeping with all these celebrities to get to where she is. Overall, she confirmed she will bring California Marxism to the United States. Thanks, I appreciate that. It's still funny how she couldn't answer what policies would be different, though. Anyways, I think Brett loosened her enough, and she finally delivered her spaz attacks.
Talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
Holy crap, I swear to God, I hear so many clips of Democrats saying Trump will lock people up. Not a single person is going to believe what you're saying when you are doing just that to Trump, you unhinged maniac.
Frankly, exhausted of Brett.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
But
people
you're the
have
lever of
become.
power.
But listen, Over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me.
I actually don't is the best line Brett gave, because I didn't know what she was talking about, and I don't think she did either. I don't want to just turn the page on the Biden-Harris-Obama administration. I want to burn it to the ground. Thank you, Brett, for confronting Kamala with the statistics she doesn't like to hear. And I wouldn't want to hear it either if I was her. Now we get to maybe the most important part of the interview. Why did she say Biden was as sharp as a tack when he's on his deathbed?
You call Donald Trump he's misguided. You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump
after George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out, even people who worked for him in the Oval Office.
I love that Brett isn't allowing Kamala to move on from questions. That's what I feared from him, but he proved me wrong. She has no answer yet again because she doesn't want to admit the truth, that she knew he was going downhill. And it'd actually be a pretty big scandal if we had fair media. I could probably play the whole interview because it was the biggest train wreck I've ever seen, and if I were to guess, the poly market odds of a Trump victory will increase exponentially.